Hey everybody, Ketwolski here, welcoming you back to another one of our hashtag Star Trek Picard discussion videos. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the possible plot of this new show and its connections to that of Star Trek Online. But before we can even get into that, we need to establish a little bit about where the show is really taking place inside of the timeline. So let's review with what we know so far. A few weeks ago, Alex Kurtzman did an interview with the TV Guide where he said, quote, "The new series takes place 20 years after The Next Generation ended, in approximately the year 2399. He also said, Patrick was very clear to us in the beginning that he did not want to repeat what he had already done. And by the way, it's been 20 plus years, so he couldn't possibly be the same person anymore." Now, this is important because a lot of people took this 20-year marker to be either right after the end of the TNG show, or most people took it as the right after the end of Star Trek Nemesis. However, he says that approximately is taking place in 2399, and it's been 20 plus years. So I don't think the 20 should be taken too literally at this particular point. I think the only thing that is staying static as of right now is the destruction of Romulus happening in the year 2387. That I think is going to stay kind of the same because they want to tie it back into possibly the Kelvin films, which did take place. This, whole Romulus thing took place in the original timeline. So they want to make sure that that piece at least makes a little sense. And I think they're going to do a little fast and loose with where exactly the show is, and then once the show finally comes out, we'll actually fully understand. The other thing that we need to understand is that for sure, the development team of Star Trek Online has sat down with the showrunners from Picard. They mentioned this during one of their development blogs a few weeks ago. I will link that down here in the description below, but here's the clip where they talk about it.
So I don't know if you saw the articles that came out today. They confirmed that a big chunk of the story is coming out of the destruction of Romulus, of the Picard show.
Right, the Hope and Star stuff. Yeah.
And so I'm really curious to see what they're doing, because they're, maybe 10 years before us in the timeline. So there's a potential of, obviously, as people have worried about, there's a potential of them just erasing us from canon in one fell stroke. But I think there's a lot more potential of them adding a lot of interesting background wrinkles and history to our world.
I'm aware of some of the things they are doing with this story. CBS came out and talked with us about what. I'm not sure if I should look at this or if I should look at this.
It's this.
I know that's what it's getting, but I want to make sure that it looks more personal. But they came out and they told us some of the things that we're doing, and we shared some of the things that we had done. So, with no hope that they would change their story just for us, but maybe something inspired them.
So yeah, clearly these folks have sat down. They wanted to understand a little bit about what was going on in Star Trek Online during that time period. I don't believe that they're going to be taking things word for word in any way, shape, or form, but they wanted to understand what people have already treaded this ground. And I think, like I said in my last video, they're probably just looking to see, hey, what have you guys done? And maybe we can kind of pull some things out of there and put our own ideas in and kind of just lay the groundwork and establish this new alpha canon for this particular time period. I really don't think that they're going to be too concerned with overwriting Star Trek Online. Unfortunately, they're forever in the Beta Canon situation, so they're just going to have to deal with it and kind of deal with their own internal issues if, the Picard show messes it up too much. So that's something totally different that we can cover in a different video, but I just wanted to go ahead and share that with all of you because I know some folks were like, hey, how do you know that they were talking to the Star Trek Online folks? And that's where that particular bit of information came from. Moving forward into this little bit of a plot discussion, I want to say that I may be kind of in a margin of error of about plus or minus 4 years. We're going to say plus or minus 4 years based off of this kind of guesstimation as to where we are on the timeline. These things may be occurring. So I'm going to still operate as though the show is going to be taking place in the year 2402. And again, I'm basing that off of the fact that inside of the Picard teaser trailer, the voiceover of the woman speaking says that 15 years ago, he led one of the greatest rescue armadas, in existence, which we'll get into here in a second. And he left Starfleet, after something called the unimaginable happened. And I'm theorizing that is most likely that Romulus was destroyed, that maybe he was leading the evacuation fleet to try to get in there, to try to get people out of the way of the blast of the Hobus supernova, and he ultimately wasn't able to do everything he wanted to do there, and obviously a lot of Romulans did lose their lives, so I'm assuming that's the unimaginable event, and then he got out. So that was 15 years prior, putting this show at the year 2402. Okay, so everything we're going to talk about right now is all inside of the Beta Canon stuff. So again, this is not Alpha Canon. This is not concrete. This is not exactly what's going to happen. I just wanted to share with all of you what happened inside of Star Trek Online's lore, their Path to 2409 series lore that led up to the beginning of the Star Trek Online game about almost 10 years ago, I think it was now, where it starts off in the year 2409. So the lore covers the end of Star Trek Nemesis to the year 2409. So I'm going to skip past a lot of stuff. I'm just going to get to kind of the bigger story beats and then kind of wrapping it up with what happens inside of 2402, which I think a lot of you will find very interesting. So, following the death of Praetor Shinzon at the Battle of the Basin Rift, the Romulan government fell into disarray. Several factions fought for control and independence, including the Remans, led by a General Zeomech, who demanded control of a settlement with enough self-sufficient natural resources as reparations for hundreds of years of slavery and exploitation. Starfleet is monitoring the deteriorating state of the Romulan Star Empire, which appears to be moving forward towards open civil war. On Stardate 59480.33, Spock presents a formal request to the Unification Movement to the Federation Council, which agrees to take the matter under serious consideration. The Klingon Emperor takes advantage of the weak position of the Romulans to stage lightning strikes into Romulan space, retaking Khitomer and the sector surrounding it. The Federation Council criticizes the move, but Ambassador Kim Tak responds that the Empire is simply reclaiming territory that belonged to the Klingons by right. On Stardate 61829.83, the IKS Kuv is attacked by a Gorn ship, and 207 Klingons lose their lives. Gorn representatives claim that the commander of the warship was acting without orders, but refused to surrender the surviving crew of the Kuv over to the Klingon Empire. In response, Chancellor Martok expels the Gorn diplomats from the Empire and orders ships to the Klingon border with the Gorn hegemony. 2385, the Enterprise E leads a contingent of ships under the command of Jean-Luc Picard into the Khitomer sector to assist in the evacuation of Federation citizens being displaced by the new Klingon occupation. After this mission, Jean-Luc Picard takes a 3-month sabbatical in France. Then he takes his place as the Federation ambassador to Vulcan. In 2387, the situation at Hobus has been uncovered by both Ambassador Spock and Ambassador Picard, who appeal to the Vulcan Science Academy to aid the Romulans with the crisis. Unfortunately, the Academy declines the request. Undeterred, both Picard and Spock work in secret with the Provisional Romulan government to convince them that evacuation is the only solution. They eventually agree and begin a planet-wide evacuation set to take at least 6 weeks. 27 hours after the order was given for evacuation, however, the Hobus star goes supernova. The resulting chain reaction destroyed Romulus and Remus, along with billions of Romulan lives. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the Vulcan Science Academy gives Spock red matter to create a small singularity that is powerful enough to swallow the supernova. Following destruction of Romulus, the largest humanitarian armada is dispatched by Starfleet to aid the Romulan refugees. However, decades of distrust and years of war made the process difficult. Some colonies welcomed the assistance, while others flatly refused and eventually perished due to lack of supplies. In the year 2389, it leaks out that the Vulcan Science Academy has had the knowledge and capability to save Romulus, but they refused to do so at the time. Picard works tirelessly to try and smooth out this revelation, as many are outraged by the news. Klingon aggression continues as the humanitarian crisis festers. Now we arrive in the year 2402, the year our new Picard show will be taking place. In this year, on Stardate 71231.20, Ambassador Jean-Luc Picard retires from his position as Federation ambassador to Vulcan. Reports say that Picard would settle in France. Okay, so that kind of covers what the Beta Canon stuff is. Now, I don't think, again, like all of that stuff is going to be inside of the show. Based off of the voiceover in the teaser, he's certainly not an ambassador, but an admiral, so they're definitely already changing a little bit there. I think it's safe to assume that he did work closely with Spock, per the Countdown comic that we saw, also another Beta Canon thing, but I think it's fair to say that he worked closely with Spock to try to save Romulus. I think the whole situation with the Vulcan Science Academy not helping Romulus to begin with is one of the reasons perhaps why it is that his faith was shook and why he left Starfleet after the event. And I think that the greatest rescue armada inside of, Federation history is the one that they are referencing inside of the teaser trailer. I think the rescue armada is going to be put together. I think once the Hobus thing really kind of comes to light, the rescue armada is going to be put together and then sent in to the Romulan neutral zone to try to save as many Romulans as they can before the supernova has a chance to destroy everybody. I think they're going to tweak it a little bit to maybe make it so that Picard kind of puts the fleet together and gets it in there. even though the Vulcan Science Academy wasn't really super ready to help at the moment. I think they're going to kind of maybe jump the gun. Maybe they're going to tweak the timetable a little bit like that. Or perhaps they're just going to set it so that, after, the Hoba supernova goes up and Romulus and Remus are destroyed, Picard immediately gets the orders and musters the fleet and then takes them in, something like that. I do, though, think that the whole Vulcan Science Academy and possibly even Starfleet not helping the Romulus save itself from the Hoba supernova is going to be one of the major plot points of the series. That's just a guess on my part, but it does tie into the whole, what made you lose your faith on us that we heard in the voiceover. But that, just speculation, but these are these different ideas that I wanted to kind of share along with you guys what I was thinking about. And I do think a lot of this stuff is kind of going to be in there. I don't think they're going to do too much on the Klingon aggression stuff. I went ahead and put that in there just to give context as to what was going on, and also his mission to Kittimer, where he led another rescue mission. I don't think they're going to do another Klingon war. Obviously, that happened inside of Star Trek Online, but we just got off the heels of that in Star Trek Discovery. I would be so surprised if they tried to shove another one inside of Star Trek Picard. I just don't think they're going to do it. I don't think that's what they're going to do again. So I think they're going to leave that piece out, but like I said, I wanted to leave that in there for context. So they're already starting to change some things, like in the, he's not an ambassador, he's an admiral, but I do think a lot of this stuff, a lot of the beats, a lot of the major story beats, I think they're going to take and put into the show and then build a whole narrative around that. And I think it may even have to do with maybe Picard trying to look for his friend Spock, or maybe trying to understand more about what it was that actually went wrong, which is something that we explored a lot inside of Star Trek Online, but I don't know if mainstream audiences are really ready for a whole series about Iconians. I don't think they're ready for that. I think they're going to change that quite a bit. But we did explore that a lot in Star Trek Online, and it wasn't just a matter of it naturally going supernova. There was this whole experiment that was going on there. There was a bunch of, the long game of the Iconians' revenge on the Romulans. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to get into it here. But, so there was a great exploration of that inside of the game. So I think that might be what the show is kind of about. Maybe Picard is on some kind of redemption tour, and he's trying to figure out what happened and maybe trying to make himself feel a little bit better or whatever it is, or clear his name for some reason, or try to understand what happened and why it happened so quickly and why he wasn't able to save as many Romulans. So that's my ideas right there. What do you guys think? Do you think that they're going to be pulling a lot of these story beats from Star Trek Online? Do you think that they're going to be doing something completely different and maybe they were just curious as to what they should stay away from? I'm curious to hear what you guys and gals think of this. Do you think the time period's also correct? Do you think it's going to be around 2402, or is it going to be a little bit later, or a little bit after that? What do you guys think that what's going on with that? So I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think of this. Please throw a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and throw your comments down below, and I'll catch all of y'all next time. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies.